welcome to deepest, darkest Oxfordshire. You join me and my friend Cav as we embark on a 48-hour session on somewhere a little bit special. Just had this bite pretty quickly, £27 common on a lovely little squid wafter. The fish in here are pretty cagey, so we're really pleased to get off the mark straight away. What a cracking start. So here we are on our first morning of our 48-hour session on a lovely little estate lake in deepest Oxfordshire. Now, this little lake that you can see behind me has been shrouded in secrecy for a good number of years, and I've spent the last 14 years of my life rebuilding it. Now, way back in the beginning when we first started, we had no idea how big the fish could grow or what sort of environment it was, but after lots and lots of hard work from a very small group of good friends and syndicate members, we've turned it into something a little bit special. So we're here for a weekend to try and outwit some of its gorgeous residents. There's myself and Marc, who you're going to see in a minute. We are basically up against it this week because the fishing at the moment has been incredibly tough. We've just had a little look with the drone and there is lots of carp bobbing around in the weed. They look massive. We could be in for something completely mega. We'll probably have a little look at some of the baits we're using, and you'll get to see some really nice footage of some of the local wildlife. It's going to be an interesting 48 hours for sure. Like I say, we've got our work cut out, but there are some mega prizes to be had. So Cav, you've been a member here for quite a few years now. It's a very typical English estate lake. You've had a very productive spring. How do you go about fishing a venue such as this?
Do you know, I think this is one of those special waters in that, I don't know why it's like this. It's always quiet. You're looking at, 4.5, 5 acres. Yeah. It's really shallow, crystal clear, no matter what month of the year. Certain times of the year like we are now, it's full of weed, full of exceptionally beautiful big fish, but there's no one here. It's just really, really quiet. It's so special. It actually works as a negative because they're just not used to that much angling pressure. They really don't like it. I mean, this morning was a prime example. We arrived shortly after the sun rose. There's carp steaming up absolutely everywhere. They're showing. There's jacuzzis in some area, and then 3 hours later, once they sort of know you're here after your bite, it's it. They're done. Yeah. They're done, and you can guarantee that the same thing that we saw this morning won't happen tomorrow morning. It's almost as if it needs another 3, 4, 5 days to reset itself, so that fish become accustomed to being alone again. So it actually can make the angling very tricky. It's your quintessential small, snaggy pit, where although the carp aren't pressured, the very nature of you being there, as soon as that human interference comes in, their guard goes right up. So it actually makes the fishing at times incredibly tough, even though spring is a very productive time of the year. It didn't take them long to know you were here and just not tolerate your presence.
So that's that typical clear water, small pit mentality, isn't it?
Yeah, yeah.
And obviously the nature of the lake bed changes year on year.
Huge.
But it is incredibly weedy a lot of the time, and the silt is quite deep in places. So how does that sort of change the way you fish for them?
Again, it doesn't necessarily change the way I fish for them, but I try to use exactly what you said there, the weed growth and the silt as a benefit, as an aid. You know, you've seen it in your own angling. If there's no weed in a venue, especially a small venue, the carp are notoriously spooky.
Yeah.
But I think part of it this spring, where the weed was so thick so soon because we had another mild winter, is that it actually bought you the extra day's grace where you were on them but they sort of tolerated you because they had that safety blanket of the weed.
Yeah.
So it went from being a winter or winters previous, prior to COVID, where they'd live on the far bank snags, to suddenly spring coming around this year and they weren't in their normal homes, which would be in amongst the canopies. They weren't there. They were still in the weed beds that weren't there in previous springs. And again, it was hard because the holes in the weed were very small. You did a lot of bank work, and even trying to find them little pockets that you could safely present and present well, they were few and far between and so hard to come by. So although it made it easier because they were so localised in the weed, actually presenting and fishing in the weed made it trickier, but it did give you more grace. You could allow yourself a few more mistakes in a session, and when you got it right, you tended to build on it. It wasn't a one fish, one trip. It was if you're on them and fish really sensibly and really well, you'll get 3 or 4.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was tricky at times, but as soon as you got it, the bites kept coming and the fish were more obliging because of that weed, because of all the things that you'd think would go against you actually works in your favour.
I mean, one thing that's very unique about here is the fact that you can look in and see everything. Yeah. So how have you found that the fish engage with bait? Obviously, because we've spent hundreds of hours here climbing trees, watching how they respond to bait. But what's your thoughts on it? You know, they clearly like their food, don't they? But they can be quite nervous around it as well.
The thing with this is, and this is what I explain to my friends, is that when you come to a venue like this, that is small, intimate, it naturally lends itself to tiny little traps, little handfuls here and there, small little bags, and being really full of finesse. And I'll be brutally honest with you, I'm yet to see on a venue like this such a reaction to giving them a lot of bait. And I'm never shy of giving a fish food, but them first few trips I was almost kicking myself to say, why didn't you put more in? Why didn't I wasn't getting as many bites, and I should have reacted then. But again, it's that small, intimate, tricky pit. I want to do little traps, and as soon as those 2 trips, I put them aside, or I was putting maggots in the mix and everything, just trying to nick bites. And as soon as I went there with no, sod it, they're carp, I know the baits work, I know it's how productive it can be, even though it's spring, I'm just going to do it.
Yeah.
And as soon as I did that, I've never looked back. I've got 10 kilos with me now, there's another 5 in the van, because I've never seen such a feeding response in the spring. I know they're active, but to actually get through that much boilie in the spring, where usually I'm little singles, little fluoros on the spot, handful of baits here and there, I just went polar opposite. Said, no, you're going to eat. I know you're going to eat. I know you're going to love it. So have it. And mate, it was just changed everything. It's bizarre.
So we've got 2 very different setups going. You're going to fish over quite a lot of bait, because that's something that's been really productive for you. And whereas I'm going to try and nick a couple of bites because we're under a bit of pressure by fishing over a very small trap. It'd be really interesting to see which of the 2 techniques pays off.
Well, I think you've started so well. You've already nicked your first bite, and only going on from my own experience in the last month and build up to this happening is that I couldn't give them enough. I just couldn't give them enough. So why change something for film? I'm just going to angle. I'm just going to do what I do, try to do it as best I can, and hopefully the results will be replicated. You know, we can't force it to happen. They're carp. They're as wild as they can be here, and they know they're being fished for now. But no, the game is on, and you know what this place has. You know they're in here, and I know which ones are due, and I know which ones I want. And ordinarily I wouldn't be here now. I'd have moved on, because again, what you've got here it's so special. It's almost too special. I feel like I'm encroaching. I don't want to be here for my one night every week, and I can't explain that to people. It's almost as if it's too much of a good thing. It's mad. If I don't fish it for a year, I don't fish it for a year. But I've got that special ticket, and I know that in a drop of a hat, I can be looking at 30s and low 40s and mid 40s now, bigger, foot in the edge, just in 2 foot of water. And it's that buzz. It's a bizarre feeling to explain to someone that you don't want to be here every day. It's so strange.
I think they describe it as addictive fishing, a very addictive type of venue where you can see them and interact, and you can see the errors of the ways that you're trying to catch them.
Gotcha.
So let's see how the rest of the session pans out.
I think we'll be all right, buddy.
Let's hope so.
Just around this corner now. A few of the fish have moved down from Gavin's end like we thought they would this time of day, and they've just started to creep along that right hand margin real close to the bank beneath that scum line. So I'm just going to go around there now. I've crumbed up quite a bit of the herb boilie and some of the slicker pellets and a handful of corn. I'm just going to gently go around there and just dab a couple of areas with the spod rod. Just literally lower a spod on it, tip it up just nice and stealthily instead of just putting it by hand. I think I can sort of manufacture a chance there now. So yeah, I'll be back shortly. Got carp coming right over it now. Imagine just moving through the cloud of crumb. And one of them's just tilted on it straight away. The brakes have gone on, and that is one that's dropped straight down on it. And that is one of the big ones at the back. That's a fish called the parrot, and one that I'm desperate to catch as well. I've got to keep really quiet here and try to get really low because they are literally less than a rod length out. You can just see where that spod sort of tilted. Luckily I've got this bit of tree cover. But they're coming your way now. If you look down to your left, they'll just be working along your margin. Always check left or right. Luckily they haven't seen me. But again, that big common's come straight back on it. And that is that one there, that's the big common. I had that out a few weeks ago at 38 pound. She's looking very well, but that's one that we don't want to catch again, so we'll let that one leave. But she's looking really big again. Obviously that still hasn't spawned, she looks massive. One more plop down, then I'm going to get out of here, because even though I'm keeping quiet, and I'd still rather be lowering this little spot and then flicking it, and as you've seen there, I haven't actually spooked any of the fish. Sometimes I think when you're thrown out by hand, you can spook them, but yeah, my God, there's some big ones down here now. There's a couple right at the back there, there's a tank. But yeah, certainly exciting stuff on this shallow, clear water. I'm going to get back. I've got a couple of rigs already tied. I'm going to get out of their way and hopefully they're going to come back in, have a little bit of a feed up and hopefully try to disrupt some of this crud that's on the bottom and get a bit of colouring water. Bite. Well, it is just absolutely spanked up to the butt, and by the feel of it, it's one of the good ones. She just broke the surface then, and she's right on the edge of the snag still. Luckily the snags are all cut away and quite undercut, but still it's bloody scary. Even unbraid, it's absolutely horrible. Yeah, it does. I think it's one of the better ones. Oh, there we go. Unfortunately, she's found probably one of the only snags in the water that actually touches down. I think this is going to have to be a boat job. Do you mind just putting my jacket on for me, please? Not ideal. She's still on, which is the positive. One just trident clipping me up. Right, well, as you've just seen, unfortunately this fish has found the snag. All I can literally do now is just sort of reel myself into it, trying to be as nice as calm as I can. It's not ideal really. Oh, she's big as well. Yeah, she's the one. And that is a 40 pounder. Yeah, she's looking big. Woohoo! Patch. Well, you've seen what's just happened there. And that's why you wear a life jacket. That's why you take your time. And yeah, typically out of all the snags that it manages to find that's touched down is the last tree that's fallen in the last storm that we just couldn't manage, or the lake owner we just couldn't manage. But again, you fish strong, braid all the way through, solid leaders, and have the access to a boat. Nothing really is going to go wrong, just as long as you're on your game and you're there ready for events. So yeah, really happy with that. Now I'm just going to take my time, paddle back, because again, she's looking huge. Yeah, real good. Well, you really probably couldn't script it. Like we said earlier on, I decided to put a lot of bait out just because it's what I have been doing and it's been working so well for me. I'll be honest, it got to the point where, as predicted, they did turn up, they got down this end, and it's almost you sat there thinking, did I put too much in? And again, it's stupid really, I knew that it was going to happen. But you just don't expect it when it does happen for it to be the biggest one in the lake at fractionally over 45 pounds. So yeah, to say that I'm happy after that horrific boat battle that you witnessed, where it really did lead me on a merry dance, this one certainly liked its herb. And yeah, that little super squid dumbbell was nestled so firmly in that bottom lip, she was never going to drop off, so my name really was on this one. Just testament to the bait really. Hasn't been out long, I've got through so much of it. I've already got my freezer full again. It's going to be a really good year, and for the first time in a long time, I'm really excited. Happy days. Cheers, Gav.
So the sun is setting on the first day, and what a day it's been. Cav caught that lovely 45 pounder, and the fish this morning, the 27 pound common. It's been an absolutely great day. We just had a lovely barbecue. Everyone's put the rods back out for the evening. The crayfish are a little bit active, but hopefully we'll wake up to something a little bit more interesting in the morning. Good morning. Well, it was a bit of an interesting evening for me last night. So going back to just before dark, I moved one of my rods to a little area where I don't see anyone ever put a rod. And I scattered a few of my favourite baits around it. Didn't go too mad, about 40 baits. And then in the night, well, I had quite a busy night really. I had 4 bites. Started off with a couple of small fish. They were getting slowly bigger. And then I hooked into another fish at some unearthly hour this morning. It definitely felt like a better one. It was a real prolonged fight. And when I got it into the margins, I could see it was a real good one. So managed to pop it in the net. Started dealing with the fish. So got it out onto the mat, took the hook out, put it on the scales. It was a 31-pound, 8-ounce common, a real stunning fish. And then in typical fashion, the other rod pulled up tight and ripped off. So in my haste, I bundled it back into the sling, quickly popped it back in the margins, and just pushed it out into slightly deeper water like a true professional. Got the other fish in, and in again ironic fashion, it was a real small, tiny little carp. Can't have been no bigger than about 5 pound. And just as I'm pulling it into the net, I happened to notice that the real nice one that was in the retainer was just freely swimming out past the one I was playing. So in true nod fashion, I let it out of the sling. But that's how it goes sometimes. Sometimes you win, sometimes you lose. So we haven't got any really nice fish to show you yet this morning. The fish are all starting to bob up in the weed. It's going to be a nice sunny day. We're going to get some nice footage of the fish today, I think. And there might even be a chance of a fish in the edge. So we're going to have a little play. We'll catch up in a little bit.
So, Gavin, for your general member of the public, you know, someone new to fishing or someone who's really, really experienced, why Handcraft Baits? What's going to make them put their bait down and give yourself and Handcraft some attention?
Good question. It's a tough market. But the one thing I've realised in the last few years is it seems there's a lot of people out there that are sort of unhappy with a lot of the baits. And I think they come to us because we've got a good reputation for being sort of old school in our approach. I think the better baits seem to sort of come, I think it was like the 90s, like the peak in the bait making era. And I'm pretty sure that that's one thing. I get a lot of older customers come to us, but just recently a lot of the newer kids that are getting into carp fishing are, you know, they're sort of following on because they've seen us on social media. Mm-hmm. So yeah, we're definitely down that old school sort of route. We make baits that are definitely down the HMV spectrum. You're not going to come to Handcraft and buy a cheap sort of bulker bait. You are going to have to pay a little bit more for it, but I'm quite proud to say that because that's how I think bait should be made. You know, I can't make a bait that is £1 worth and try and sell it for 10 quid. That's just not what I think about. That's not, you know, that's not my ethos at all. So we definitely make sort of baits down that sort of HMV spectrum, really.
Okay. So you touched on there your ethos then. So what is your company's mission? What do you aim to do? What do you promise the customer?
I think what the customers of today really want is when they spend their hard-earned money, they want to know that they're getting a bait that's got all of the things that I say is in there. You can never prove or disprove what is or isn't in there. But I think what customers really want is a little bit of clarity, don't they? They've seen you guys catching loads and loads of carp in a very short space of time. And I think they're buying into the brand because they realise, you know, it is that good quality. And I've got to try and persuade people to spend that little bit more money. You know, if it comes down to finances about bait, and let's be honest, that's what a lot of this comes down to. You know, you're in a war with people trying to spend £4 or £5 per kilo. You've got to, like I say, it's a tough market. You've got to try and get them in. They've got to catch that carp straight away. And that's one thing that our baits seem to be doing. These new customers that are coming in, they're going out. The following weekend, I'm getting that message saying, I've had my first take, I've had my first 30-pounder. The pop-ups did exactly what you said they would. the bait's real, I can tell it's real, you know, and that you've got a customer for life.
And how does that make you feel getting them text messages, getting them phone calls in the morning?
It is the best side of what we do. You know, there's a lot of hard work goes into making bait. It's a dirty, stinking job. It's incredibly long hours. You miss out on seeing lots of your family, but those messages you get, you know, they are the reason we do this. It's and those messages are just growing and growing. You've heard my phone bleeping this weekend while we've been here. It's just, there's just catcher pots piling in, and even you guys, like the guys on the team, we've just seen instant success. We started this a few months ago, and straight away everyone's catch reports, you know, they're up there. They're fishing lakes where it's fishing really, really slow. They're turning up and putting a couple of kilos out, and they're the one getting the bites, you know, and that's how you know you're doing something right.
That's good. And so across the range, you've got quite a large range now, going from your frozen baits through to the ready-made variety of them. Also, you specialise in making some amazing pop-ups and actual hook baits as well.
Yeah.
Where do you see yourself, or where would you like to see yourself in the next sort of few years? What's your goal?
I mean, we haven't really thought much past next week, because we've been so busy.
Yeah.
But the hook bait side of the business that's flying. That's really taking off. You know, the bait sale, the freezer bait sales is good, and it's getting more and more every single month as we're getting bigger. But the hook bait side of the business is majorly important, and it transpires that a lot of people out there that are using, even if they're using other people's baits, they've got problems with their hook baits. You know, we seem to be using much smaller baits these days on the end, and the most common question is, do your 12 millers hold up a size 4? You know, you asked the question when you started. It's the same thing. I like using small baits in the winter. Will they hold up that size 4? Every company tells you that they do. They buy a pot and it's a wafter. But that's where we're really fortunate, because the guy that I work with on the hook baits, he's been doing this for 25 years, I think 35 years, and he makes incredibly good hook baits, and he's definitely got some technology that, as far as I'm aware, nobody else has. And what that means is that you can cram so much more food into a little 12mm ball than anyone else can.
So you say there, sorry to interrupt, you say you can cram food in there. If I can buy a packet off the shelf, can't I, and it'll have the food crammed in?
You'd be told that it had it in there,
right,
but
okay.
They simply haven't. It's simple as that, because they can't make a pop up with that amount of food stuff in there. You know, they haven't got the technology to do that anymore. The companies are catching up, that's a sure fact, but that floatant material that we use, you can use it in such a small quantity that it allows the other 70% to be edible items.
Right, okay.
So would you rather cast out an inedible sphere or something that is made with, you know, liver powder, GLM, fruit palatants in there? And even when those liquid flavours have washed out of your bait, you've still got that core of powdered additives in there. And again, it's something. It's something that we've seen, and we're starting to get a lot of other brands ask us questions about hook baits, because it's clearly something that across the industry has always been a problem. Honestly, I'm just really fortunate to have that guy Marc Pidgley working with us, because he can answer all those questions, and it's a sort of hook bait I want to cast out. You know how I fish. In the depths of winter, I move. I fish over a very small amount of bait. The hook bait for me is paramount. I want that to be the first one that they pick up, and that's where we've definitely got an edge over some other people, because we can cram some incredibly good things into those hook baits. Right,
so I'm going to put you to the test then, Gav, on 3 of the pop-ups that you would not leave home without. And I know how precise you are and how, I'm going to say, anal you are in regards to your hook baits. I've known you for a number of years now, and there are some people that are just so in the zone and so fixated and so precise. 3, you've got a choice of 3. What 3 would you never leave home without?
Yep, again, common question. If it's cold, so when I'm doing the most of my angling, my first hook bait that I go to is that sting, the yellow sting. And you know, everyone's saying, why? What is it about the sting? Well, it's a blend of essential oils. It's got some very acidic flavours in. It's a real nice colour that gets paler as you use it. And I've been on so many waters now where they're like, they won't take a bright one in here, mate. turn up, dosh one of them out, put a few Nutriplex boilies around it, it's a guaranteed bite for me. That is my go-to hook bait. And I've had to eat a bit of humble pie recently because the super squid that you guys rave about so much, this is Pidge's little brainchild. It's got some incredibly good things in there and an incredibly old-fashioned flavour, but with some real sort of modern new ingredients in it as well. That seems to have changed all of your guys' fishing, doesn't it? And I must admit, the 3 or 4 times that I've been out there and bunged it on, I've had some really good hits. There's something in that specific sort of blend, that makeup, and its colour that seems to be working incredibly well. We've caught on it this weekend as well, so I know it's one of your favourites.
Absolutely, yeah.
That's right up there. Number 3, I like my matching hook baits. I've seen a major transition in the last few years where these busy venues that I'm going to and that you're going to, in the winter and in the spring, the bright ones definitely get you the faster bites. When the fish are a bit lethargic, they can take it or leave it. They will drop down and pick those up. But in reverse, when we get to now, June, July, the fish have spawned, I've seen, and again, we use this place here as a prime example, I've seen them beelining towards something, you know, to the food, see the bright one, flare up and completely avoid it. And I saw it at Lynch Hill quite a lot. They'll go to it and they're so smart at places like that they'll just feed around it. They'll never ever pick it up because they know that that one's sticking an inch off the bottom that's bright pink or white. They won't touch them. So it can be counterproductive. You have to have baits in the range that are foodie, that are matching, because there is certainly a time, and I can see it in the catch reports, the guys that are matching wafter, they're getting the 30s and the 40s. And then you get to the cold spell in the winter again, the bright ones win every single time. So there is no one hook bait that you can cast out forever and just expect it to get you bites. And even my favourite sting, at times, it'll be the dull one that goes next to it. So you have to move with the times. But no, those 3 are my, they're definitely my favourites.
It's brilliant. Cheers, Gav. So it's that old school history that you're trying to embed, but with a sort of a new era type twist to move it on as a company. You excited?
I'm mega excited. I'm knackered because we've been working so hard. But no, it's been a really interesting part of my life, and we're really looking forward to what comes this year. It's going to be epic.
It's going to be exciting. Good man.
So it's that old saying that time goes so quickly in carp fishing, and it certainly has this week, hasn't it?
Yeah, mate, it's flown by.
It's been a pretty tough session, it started so well, didn't it? The conditions looked pretty good, had that fish straight away. And then we peaked quite early with that huge 45 pounder. But ever since then, the fish seem to have sort of slipped away, haven't they?
We knew it was going to be a tough ask when we spoke about this months ago. It was, do we really want to do it on the special lake because we know what they can be like? And true to form, although it has been very, very kind, especially with the big one and that great start, it has come back and it's been tough again, hasn't it?
Yeah, the fish here are very, very cagey. So, but by fishing at sort of opposite ends of the lake, sort of keeping on our toes, we managed to nick a few bites. Obviously, we had a bit of good luck with the big one, and we had some bad luck with the Houdini common that slipped away from us, but save that for another day. But it's been really interesting. So we think we're going to come back and probably have another go when it gets really cold. Because I think this could be quite a special sort of film when that, when the ice turns up, and because you can always see the fish here. It's given us some, good feedback. We're going to come back and have another go.
100%. Yeah. 100%.
Hope you've enjoyed it, and we'll catch up with you in the winter.